as we go into session 7, we last time talked about deputation and furlough. We need to start now talking about missionary finance. And there's a lot to be considered here, fellas, because you're going to have your ducks in a row when it comes to this. And you don't want the reason that you have to come off the field or the reason that you are really struggling while you're on the field to have to do with finances, especially financial issues that you didn't take care of yourself. And you want to be very, very careful about that. This issue has been the stumbling block for a lot of missionaries, and you don't want that to be your situation, your case. Some important facts is that if you have been called of God to go do this work, you are worthy of support. Don't let anybody shortchange you. Don't let anybody tell you any different. You're worthy of support. If God's called you to do this, you're worthy, and you need to know that, believe that, cling to that, and not let yourself feel guilty about raising the money, and not feel guilty about having decent support. You don't need to feel like, oh, well, I just gotta, whatever it takes to get by. Well, yes, I mean, we need to be people of contentment, and if you're able to get by, then that is enough. But it's also not wrong to have more than that, to make a good living in your endeavors for the Lord. And you need to realize this: on the foreign field, you won't be able to supplement your income. Now, there might be some exceptions to that, but I just don't know of a situation where in a foreign country they're going to allow you to work. Now, if you've got some type of a business that, is going on here in the States that you can run from there, okay, maybe that kind of situation. But in terms of, man, things are a little tight, I think I'll go get a job, you're not going to have that opportunity. So you need to realize that. You need to be prepared for that. You need to, not think, well, even if I only get half my money, then I'll do this or that, because you're just not going to have that chance on the foreign field. And you've got to be aware of that. There's no way to supplement your income by your own personal work or endeavors. Concerning your salary, as I've already said, you do need to make sure that you can survive. Make sure that you can make it. I mean, that's the last thing you want to do, is not be able to survive. But you also should have a desire to thrive. It's not just, we're not going to go hungry, but we're doing okay. Now, again, that's not, I don't expect you to make $75,000 a year as a missionary. That time probably is coming as our economy continues to go whatever direction. I mean, eventually missionaries might get paid that money, and it might not be all that outlandish. But at the same time, I don't expect you to make $30,000 a year either. What's fair? What's equitable? What is, and the way we always measured that is we looked at the ABA, and whatever the missionaries that were on full salary was making, we felt like that was an appropriate salary. And so that's the way that we did it. That's the way that we handled it. You have to decide that yourself. But just because you can live on $2,000 a month in this foreign country doesn't mean that that's all the money you should get. You need to make sure that your housing is taken care of as well. I mean, you and your church can work this out, but we always felt like that housing was additional to the salary. So we got the salary that the full salaried ABA missionaries got, and then on top of that, we got our housing expenses, which was our rent and our utilities and those kind of things were taken care of out of our housing. Our health insurance was paid and taken care of. Social Security, the church paid half the Social Security for us. And so you think about all these things, and you think, well, man, that's a lot. That's a good deal. Well, yeah. And this guy's leaving America and he's going to a foreign country, and why wouldn't we want to take care of him, and why wouldn't you want to be taken care of? Now, again, I'm not telling you to be selfish. I'm not saying that I won't do it unless, that attitude would certainly be wrong as well. But you need to realize that you don't have to be afraid to ask for these things either. If the money's available, then why not, treat our missionaries well and make sure that they're taken care of. Another thing that you got to give serious consideration to if you have children is what are you going to have to do to educate those children. Therein may lie an expense that people here in America don't have, but you have no choice. You may have to homeschool your children. Well, it's more expensive to homeschool your children than it is to send them to public school. Buying all that literature is quite expensive. And so there's going to be an extra expense. You may need to send them to an international school or some other type of private school, and that's going to be expensive to be able to do that. So you've got to figure out what's the best situation, and you've got to factor that in. This is going to be an expense that we've got to take care of. And see, this is the reason. This is a reason that some foreign missionaries may, we try to justify their salary because we say, well, I know it doesn't cost as much to live over there. No, but if you're having to pay $300 or $400 a month to send your kids to school or more, then that's quite different than what most people face here in America, and you don't have a choice. So that's something to think about. Also, you're going to need work funds. You're going to need the finances to do this work. It's going to cost money to repair your vehicle. It's going to cost money to put gas in it. It's going to cost money to put literature together. It's going to cost money to buy land, build buildings, whatever is involved to rent facilities. It's going to cost money, and you got to have money. You're going to teach the people on the field, of course, to take a lot of these responsibilities, but still you're going to need some funds for these kind of things to be done. What about your passage, your airline tickets, and what about setting up housing? Have the things you're going to have to buy just to get your house set up over there. There's so many things like this that you've got to consider, that you've got to have put together. You got to have your mind wrapped around these things so that they don't take you by surprise. Now, what about setting up your accounts, your bank accounts? Well, the very first thing is you need to have 2 accounts. You need to have your own personal account, and then you need to have the mission account. The mission account is the one that is under your sponsoring church's name, and where your mission treasurer at the church is the one that oversees this and makes things run smoothly. This is the one that we're going to take out our expenses of traveling to do the ministry on deputation, and once we get on the field, this is when we need to buy Bibles. It's going to come out of this account. When we have ministry expenses, it's going to come out of that account. But then I'm going to have my personal account that that could be at whatever bank I want it to be at. It could be at the same bank that the church uses, but it could be at any other bank as well. And that's my personal money, and that has nothing to do with anybody. Once it hits that account, it's my business and it's nobody else's business. And so what's going to happen is, out of the mission account, a check is going to be written, or a transfer, or an automatic deposit. Somehow the money is going to come out of the missions account for my housing, my salary, whatever other things we've agreed to, and that's going to get into my personal account. And like I said, from that point, it's my business. Now, of course, I have obligations. I've got to pay my rent. I've got to, put food in my family's mouth. I've got to, take care of if I needed clothes or something like that. My kids, I got to pay their school fees, Okay, so you've got obligations, but what I'm saying is, just like the guy that's working down at the factory, he gets that paycheck, he goes puts it in his bank. The people down at the factory cannot tell him what to do with it. Your sponsoring church, your supporters, nobody can tell you what to do with your money once it's in your account. And of course, if you're a person of integrity, you're going to do the right things with it. You're going to honor God. Now, I will say this much. You should pay tithes back to your sponsoring church. And I think from the scriptures, you should also give offerings, probably designated to missions and maybe designated to other special things. And if I were your pastor and knew you weren't doing that, then we'd have a problem. So even though I can't, tell you what to do with your money, at the same time, if I know you're not a giver, that's a problem for me. And you can't give your money locally in most cases. Now, if it's a developed country, you probably could. But in most cases, your tithing would be so overwhelmingly out of ratio with what the people's local tithe would be, that it just won't work. You're probably going to give an amount of money that is, who knows how much bigger. They're probably going to, on a given Sunday, a group of 30 people in this new fledgling church in this developing country is probably going to give an amount of money that's equal to $3 or $4. And then here's your tithe that, whatever, is maybe $100. And so you can't, it's going to throw everything out of kilter. You can't do it that way. You've got to send your tithe back to your sponsoring church, and that you probably will give a little bit in concert with what they give, to not throw it off, because your whole goal is for them to be able to do it on their own. And so if you put in large amounts of money and they become dependent on those large amounts of money, and then time comes for you to leave and it's just the natives left with a native pastor, all of a sudden it's a whole different ballgame. So you never want to set that up from the very beginning. Send your tithe back to your sponsoring church, but you got your separate personal account, and that's what you pull things out of for your needs. So you're always keeping in mind, is this a ministry expense or is this a personal expense? And be a person of integrity. Don't cross that line. Don't make it muddy. Just, it's either a ministry expense or it's not. And, do the right thing in those situations. Now, you do need to realize that in a lot of countries that you may go to work in, it may be pretty much a cash society. Here in America, we're used to our debit card, our credit card, and if you're like me, I hardly ever carry cash. I carry just a little bit of cash in case I go somewhere that's my only option is to pay cash, but there's very few places like that. Well, flip it over on the other foot, in a lot of these developing countries, you almost never would have the chance to use a card. Very, very seldom. So what you're going to find yourself doing most of the time is going to the bank, drawing the money out of your American account with a debit card. Most countries you can do that now. That might not be an option. You may have to get your money a different way. But so you're pulling money out personal account, you're pulling money out on this other debit card from the missions account, Keep that money separate. You cannot let it intermingle. Keep it separate. 2 different pockets, whatever. You got to keep that money separate. And then make sure, your personal money, it's your business. But on those mission funds, you make sure that you get receipts, or in a situation where it's impossible to get a receipt, make a receipt, you make sure that you keep track of that, and that if anybody ever had any question, no problem. Here's all the receipts. Here's the financial accounting of how the money was spent. You need to be able to do that, and there not be questions, hesitation, or reservation, to know that everything is above board. So you've got those 2 separate accounts. Be sure you have a dependable person or people on the state side. First of all, I'm talking about your missions treasurer. That needs to be a dependable person. Now, most of the time, you're just going to get into a flow of things, and it's just going to flow. Everybody's going to do the right things, and it's just going to flow. But if you can't depend on that person to do just the right, normal things that need to be done for this thing to operate smoothly, then you better back up, and you better say, well, no, I am not going to have to battle with this all the time, because this person is not dependable. You need a dependable person. Then you need someone else stateside that's dependable to help you with personal needs. Now, the day and age that we live in, you can do so much over the internet with your banking that this is not quite as critical as it used to be. But you really do need someone here stateside that is a person that you trust explicitly, that you can actually give power of attorney in case you need them to sign something for you. And so it might be that you need them to, sign a document, especially stuff that's time sensitive. If it's not super time sensitive, then, maybe they can mail it to you. You could sign it and mail it back, no problem. But see, this person also needs to be getting your mail here in the United States. You need to have a person that you can give as a stateside address, and this person is going to get your mail. Again, this is why it needs to be somebody that you can definitely, trust. And so they're going to get your mail, and they're going to open it for you so that they can, some things maybe you've already talked about. Well, that's junk. Don't worry about it. But, hey, I got this in the mail. It's looks like a this and a that, and let me read it to you. What do you want me to do? Let me scan it and send it to you in a file so you can look at it. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do these things, but you need somebody stateside that you can depend on, especially if something happens and it won't happen very often, but you need immediate action. You need a person that you can pick up the phone and call and say, hey, this is urgent, I need this done, and they're going to do it. They're not going to let you down. They are going to go, they are going to take care of it. They are going to get this done for you. So you set up those accounts, you have dependable people stateside to help you with the various needs, and you make sure that you have access to all accounts. There's no reason for you not to have access to those accounts. The only thing would be if you're in a country where you cannot, just go and get the money, then it might not be as important. But what is the harm in you being a signer on those accounts? What's the harm in that? There's no harm in that. You should be trusted enough to do it, and you should in case when you're home on furlough, you need to go take care of some business, you should be able to go down there and take care of it. Of course, you're going to be communicating with your missions treasurer. Of course, these things are going to be discussed, especially if there's any big decisions to be made. The mission committee is going to be made aware. But you need to be confident that you can take care of that. And again, in most countries, the debit card where you can pull the money off, that's the best way to do it. You also need to talk to the bank about daily limits, because most debit cards have a daily limit, and sometimes you might need enough money that would exceed that limit. So there's a reason there are limits, but you need to try to get as high of a daily limit as possible for those occasions. Now, sometimes if you see the need is coming, well, you can draw money every day for several days and know that you have enough money, and you don't have to worry about it so much. But if you don't have that confidence, that, sometimes it's going to be just boom, and you can't know for sure that you're going to have extra time. And so you need to be able to have as high a limit as possible. And if you absolutely have to have the money, there's other ways to get it to you faster and in bigger amounts, but it's more expensive to do it that way. So you want to have access to these accounts. You want to have high limits if possible. Now, we discussed a little bit, but I want to be sure to refresh our ideas on handling deputation income and expenses. It's the same thing. All these come out of the mission fund. That's how they're paid for. Your deputation expenses, your even traveling on furlough to visit churches, this is handled out of the mission fund. And you need to be extremely diligent to keep track of all your expenses. If you're using the debit card, there'll be a receipt every single time. Every once in a while at the gas pump, it won't give you a receipt or whatever. You can go in and make sure the teller gives you a receipt, or you can write out a receipt. The big point is you need to be able to prove that what you've got matches up with what it said happened at the bank. So you keep all your receipts. You keep all of your checks that the churches give you as you travel. I just would discourage you. Sometimes the church gives you cash and you think, oh man, I'll just use this cash to do this. You can do that, but it kind of complicates things. Just keep using the debit card. Keep using the debit card. Buy a money order for that cash so that you're not sending cash through the mail, and just on a monthly basis, or however often you guys work it out, send that in to your home church, to your treasurer, so that they can get the money in the account, and so that they've got the receipts to match what they're seeing on the online registry, or when the statement comes, they're able to match it up and say yep, and it makes the accounting a lot easier and a lot better for them. Again, I've already mentioned the Cash Society, and you just have to understand that you've got to deal with that. One of the things that you need to consider is how to be safe, because if you're drawing money out, you're carrying cash around with you all the time. You need to think about the particular society you're in and different ways to safeguard the money that you might be carrying around with you. You also need to think about how to, again, be sure that you have enough money available, and that requires some thinking ahead sometimes, and having that higher limit that we were talking about. And you need to keep track of, because you're going to be drawing the money out, but it's going to be anywhere else in the world, it's going to be something different than an American dollar. You're not going to be operating in American dollars. So you're going to go to the bank and say, I want 10,000 shillings, I want 1,000 euros, I want 10,000 pesos. But on the bank account in America, it's going to show up as X amount of dollars came out. And so you just want to, kind of, you'll get good in your mind of keeping track of, how much money you're using, but you need to constantly be able to kind of think of it in that way so that you keep, in your mind how much money is coming out of my account. And then the other thing that you're going to have to deal with is taxes. Depending on the country that you're going to, they may expect you to pay taxes there. Most of the time, if you live in a foreign country more than, I think it's half the year, you'd have to talk to a tax professional to make sure that I'm getting this right. You may have to live there the whole year. But anyway, you are a foreign income earner, which means you actually will not owe any federal taxes. And so you may be free of that. Probably will also be free of state taxes. But there might be taxes you have to pay on the field. So the real point is you just need to get this all lined out and be prepared to pay it, whatever it is. If you don't have to pay taxes back here, great, but don't just take that as a Yahoo, look at all this money I'm saving. Make sure that you're not going to owe something on the field. Now, no matter what, if you haven't opted out of Social Security, you're going to have to pay Social Security, Medicare, those taxes, you're going to have to pay no matter what. So you need to be sure to keep that in mind when you think about your taxes. Now, let's talk about transition to the field. Transition to the field. Now, what this is doing is this is getting us down to where we're going to be completing the book, getting ready to go. And transition to the field. What about your preparations for departure? Something you need to think about is outfitting yourself with all the things you're going to need to do the work once you get there. You need to think about container versus extra baggage on the plane. Now, extra baggage on the plane is much more difficult than it used to be. It used to be you just paid an extra fee and it was no big deal. But now they're charging fees for, almost all airlines are charging fees for all of your bags, and the limitations are much stricter due to Homeland Security and things of that nature. So you need to find out through, the person that's handling your travel, through the airline, what are we allowed to do? And is that enough? If you can take 5 extra foot lockers with you, and then you're confident you can get everything else you need on the field, then maybe that's enough. You just pay for the extra bags and you take your things over that way and you don't worry about it. But perhaps that's not going to work. And you need to consider sending a container. Now, if you're going to send a container, what we've found in most cases, and again, it's different from country to country, so you have to check all this out, but within the American Baptist Association, you can work with Brother Meredith down in Hamburg, and he knows a lot about these things. But a lot of times, you could send a crate, but what we've found is the difference between sending a crate and sending a 20-foot container is so little, you might as well have the 20-foot container. And then even the next step of a 40-foot container is not, much different and not much harder. So what we need to do, though, is just think through being a good steward. If I'm going to have to ship anyway, that causes me to back up and say, well, wait a minute then. I mean, I planned on buying a bunch of stuff over there because I didn't think I was going to have to ship. But if I'm going to have to ship, then maybe I can, I mean, I'm going to have that expense no matter what. So maybe I can send things from here. It'll actually be cheaper. I'm going to have to ship anyway. So why pay $200 extra for a refrigerator and $300 extra for a stove? And, you know, I can buy the things here and have them shipped over. So that's what I'm going to do. That might be the best thing in your situation to take care of and to do that. And so you've got to figure that out, and you've got to work that out. One of the things that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that you have a receiving agent. If you're going to send a container, you need to be sure that you have a receiving agent that will be able to clear that container for you. You don't have the connections. You don't have what's needed to do that yourself. You need to have a receiving agent that will clear that container for you and take care of that. And see, these are all things that you can work out on your survey trip to make sure that you've got all of this in motion, you've got all of this exactly where it needs to be, that you have that receiving agent and you're ready to do what you need to do for your container. Another thing that you need to get squared away before you go, of course, is passports. If you've taken a survey trip, then you've got a current passport, but you need to make sure that your passports are all current and up to date. What about the visa? You know, it's different in every country, so you're going to have to do the research and figure it out. But you know, some countries you have to be there to do that work and to do all those things. You have to be there, so you don't worry about that. You be there and do what you have to do. But some it's a situation where you can do all of it from this side. You know, you do the paperwork and they send it back to you. You communicate back and forth. Or maybe you've got a missionary there on the field that will help you with your paperwork and all of that. That's a blessing. And a lot of times we've even discovered that there are agents that do those kind of things. And even though there's a fee involved, it's so much simpler to just pay them to take care of it. So you've got all that stuff that you can think about and you can work on, and just let that be something that you don't forget. I don't let that slip through the cracks. Don't get there, because you can get there in most countries. You can be there on a tourist visa for 3 months, or something. Some of them it's as much as 6 months. But then you've got to, if that expires, you got to leave the country and come back in. So maybe you can just go across the border and come back in. It's no big deal. But sometimes it is a big deal. And so you've really got to think through this, and you want to have as much of that as possibly can be done beforehand. You want to make sure that you get it done beforehand. Go have a medical exam done just to make sure that there's nothing you need to get taken care of. Again, if you're going to a developed country, it might not be that big of a deal. But if you're going to a third world or developing country, you need to be able to know that, I did due diligence, and if I go have a medical exam done, they find something, then I'll get it taken care of before I go. And that's just a good idea, just to make sure health-wise that you're taken care of. Get your life insurance in order. You really should have that in order anyway, but get your life insurance order. Check your policy, because if you die on a foreign field, it might not pay. You need to figure out, is this going to affect my current life insurance in any way? And if so, then where can I go to get life insurance that will, take care of these things, that we won't have any problems? Again, that power of attorney that we talked about, get it taken care of. Get somebody here that can sign papers for you in case there's an emergency, in case it has to be done quickly. Get somebody that can take care of that for you. Get wills made up. You need to go ahead and get that taken care of. and get some wills made so that if something should happen, I don't know, a lot of us, quite frankly, don't have a whole lot of possessions. But you've got to think through what things you do have. Who's that going to go to? And especially if you've got children, on the very unusual possibility that you and your wife both should die and that one or some of the children would survive, there's got to be somebody to take care of those kids. And you want to approach people before to find out who's willing to do this for you. And you want to have it clearly stated in your will that this is the person that will become the guardian of our children should anything happen to the both of us. So you want to get that taken care of. You also may want to go get an international driver's license. You can get an international driver's license through AAA, and it's, I don't remember the fee, it's not real expensive, maybe like $20, and all you do is take your regular driver's license up there, and they administer you an international driver's license. There's no test, no nothing like that, but in a lot of countries they'll honor your American driver's license, but having an international driver's license is just an extra helpful step. So you may want to do that, to get an international driver's license. Of course, you need to get your tickets taken care of. You need to be sure to do that, and you don't want to do that super early, but probably about 3 to 4 months in advance. You want to purchase your tickets, because if you get too close, the price will go up. So you want to be sure to get those tickets in a timely fashion, but at the same time, not too early. And you might want to consider the possibility you can pay an extra fee that will allow you that should anything unusual happen, you can change your ticket. And you might want to consider that. Seldom is that really needed or necessary. And of course, if you don't have that, usually you just do whatever it takes to make it happen. But international tickets are usually more expensive than others. And here in America, you kind of, on a domestic flight, you say, well, if it happened, I lost $200 or $300, but it was an emergency, so I had to do it. But in those situations, if you lose that money, you're talking about hundreds, and then depending on the number of family members, maybe thousands of dollars. And so to pay an extra $100 a ticket to be able to change it if necessary might not be a bad idea. So you just have to think through that and decide what you think is best and what you should do on those things. And then not only your preparation for departure, but also your preparation for arrival. Have someone to meet you at the airport, unless it's just not possible. Most places it would be possible. There's a missionary in that country, an ABA missionary, an Independent Baptist missionary, a Southern Baptist missionary. It really doesn't matter. Maybe someone you met on your survey, and you just say, hey man, could you come meet us at the airport when we come, just so there's a familiar face. Now, there may be situations where that's not possible, but usually it's possible. Even a missionary from a neighboring country, where it's not too much trouble for them to cross the border and come to the airport and get you, and they'd kind of spend a couple of days with you there, to help you get your legs underneath you. Usually that kind of situation is available. It's not too difficult of a thing. And so you want the people to come and greet you at the airport unless that's just not possible, and you need to make arrangements for a place to stay. A place to stay that night for sure. Then, some temporary housing, and maybe because of what you did on your survey, maybe you even have already taken some steps for long-term housing, but you just need a place to crash for a little while. So whether it's on our survey trip, we figured out where this really nice motel was, and we went there, or whether it's a situation where this missionary that came and got us, we're going to go spend a night or two at their house. You need some place to crash. You're going to be suffering from jet lag. You're going to need a couple of days to get your legs back underneath you. Just let yourself be in that situation where it's not too much trouble, it's not too much difficulty, and you can get rested up and ready to go. You need a place to stay. So either a motel, or in these third world countries, a lot of the major cities will have mission houses where you can go and stay, and it costs something, but it's not super expensive, maybe $30 a night to stay in that type of situation. And some of them that I've stayed in, it's more like a hotel situation. Some of them, it's more like a house that's been divided up, and you have different rooms that you can stay in. But it's a place designated kind of for that, where missionaries can come through and they can stay, and that's the purpose, is it's very helpful. And this might be run by another Baptist group, by a Pentecostal group, by a Mennonite group. I mean, there's the Catholics, there's lots of different people that do it, but they usually don't designate that only their people can stay there. Usually you can stay there. So you need a place to stay. You need to arrange for transportation. How are you going to get where you're going? So you've flown in, and you've flown into the, probably the capital city or a major city, and you've had a place to crash and relax, kind of get your legs back underneath you. Maybe this missionary is helping. Is this missionary also going to help you travel to wherever you're going to end up being long term, or do you need to hire someone to do that? How are you going to get your transportation? See, these are all the kinds of things that you can lay the groundwork for in your survey trip, and then make sure that right before your trip that you make the phone calls, make the proper connections to make sure that it's all in line and that it's all being taken care of. You do, again, want to have something figured out. What are you going to do for your children's education? And you can't go there and just not do it. You have to educate those children. They can't take a year off of school. So in advance, you got to figure it out. If it's homeschooling, maybe you want to take the materials with you. That probably would be easier in those extra bags that you can get on the plane, to kind of disperse the books out amongst those and take them with you that way. But you might also, have some other arrangements where those could get delivered to the field to you somehow, and so you'll have to figure all that out. Or if they're going to go to international school, you need to figure out what the schedule is there, and maybe they're going to have to go start right away, or maybe you can make arrangements where it'll be during a break time from school, and then you can get them started. But you need to have that. That's, again, a great value of your survey trip, to have some of these issues settled. And then the last thing that I want to say to you is, you also need to make arrangement for language. Make those arrangements. Now, there's probably going to be two options available to you. One might be language schools. A lot of countries have language schools, and predominantly they're in existence because of missionaries coming to that country and them wanting to train. That's an opportunity for them. And so you need to, again, on your survey trip, you need to visit these schools, determine, and again, this is where a missionary, especially if they're of that country and know that language, would would be able to help you determine if this is a good school or not. The other option is a language instructor, a language teacher, an individual or a couple of individuals that you would hire to instruct you in language. Now, you need to be careful. I mean, that person needs to have some ability. Just because everybody there can speak that language doesn't mean they're going to be a good teacher for you. And I guarantee you, if you just put an ad in the paper, you'll have a lot of people respond. But what about this person makes them a good choice? Well, is their education level such that I think they would be effective? Do they have some former experience in this? And so you've got those two ways of going about it: language school, language instructor, but that needs to be lined out. Now, if it's language school, they're going to have a definite starting time. So you're going to have to make your plans and arrangements that you're arriving, and then you're going to go to language school. Now, if language school means you're living on campus and you really don't have to worry about anything, then you might be able to show up, just a week ahead of time and get moved in there and everything be great. But at the same time, language school might mean that you're living on your own, going to school, or especially if you have a language instructor. So what you want to do is get there in time to set up house. You don't try not to be rushed and pushed about things. Now, if you're going through a private language instructor, then that gives you some liberty. That gives you some open doors that you don't have to worry about. Now, that's a whole lot of information real fast, but this is the introduction to foreign missions. But I just want you to understand there's a lot to think about. And you could definitely take this on missionary finance and transition to the field, and you could use this as a checklist, and you would cover most of the bases this way. And again, on that survey trip, when you're talking to that person that's experienced, when you're learning from the natives, when you're talking to other expatriates that live there, you're going to learn other things you need to take care of, and you just take that and you use it, and you get prepared and get ready to go. Lord, I thank you so much for our missionaries around the world on these foreign fields. Father, the amount of preparation that goes into them being able to be there and to be able to have their needs taken care of, their family taken care of, and conduct this ministry, Lord. It's a tremendous undertaking, and yet dozens and dozens and dozens have trusted you to lead them through that process and help them get it done, and they're there, and they're very, very successful. Help us to have an appreciation for all that they went through to get that done. And Lord, if we are going to be a foreign missionary, let us be diligent to do the work we need to do to be able to get things done and get things taken care of. And we pray and ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.